All right. Well, good morning and welcome. This is Pastor Buford. I'm coming to you from, I guess, what we're going to call the Stanford Nazarene Parsonage Studios. We're going to be doing our Sunday school this morning and this online format. We're going to do this this week and probably next week. So for a couple of weeks, we're going to have just an online Sunday school. But don't fret, Sister Rhonda will be back with us in a couple of weeks and we'll be taking over these duties again. But this morning we're going to be looking at lesson number, let me grab the book here, lesson number 9 for February 28th in your books. If you have a book, it'll be on page 36. And the title of this lesson, let me pull this up for you really quickly. The title of this lesson is Jesus Anointed at Bethany. And you can see we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 26, the first 16 verses of that chapter. And the time there, it says it's the day before the triumphal procession or the triumphal entry, and then which was actually talked about back in lesson 4. And it says Matthew recalls this event at this time because it's connected with the betrayal of Judas. And we're going to look at a little bit about the betrayal that Judas did and some of the things that are going on. We're getting to the end of Jesus's earthly ministry here. And so there's a lot of different things that are happening and going on. And the main place this is going to take place is at Simon the leper's house in Bethany, which is about 2 miles east of Jerusalem. And our golden text actually comes from Mark chapter 14, verse 18. And it says, "She hath done what she could. She has come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying." And this is the talking about Jesus being anointed with the ointment before his betrayal and for his arrest and things. But that just kind of, I guess, wets our whistle just a little bit about what we're getting into. But our lesson aim, it says here, is anything that is given for the glory of God is never a waste. And just kind of the background, I'll just read it here out of the book. It says, the first 5 and the last 3 verses of this lesson take place immediately after the last lesson, which you'll have to go back and read on your own because we had a snow day last week. It says the incident at Bethany seems to be introduced here in connection with the development of treason in the soul of Judas. With this in mind, we can see how natural it is to have let me start over. How natural it was that, having no occasion before to tell the story of the feast at Bethany, the evangelist should be disposed to tell it now, as connected in his mind with the traitor's selling of his Lord for 30 pieces of silver. And that's a lot of words that basically says that Judas is going to betray Jesus. There's going to be an anointing with oil, and there's going to be a plot to kill him. I don't know why they had to use so many words to say that, but sometimes some of these older books, I think sometimes they get hung up with using a lot of flowing words, which a lot of times it makes better sense just to say it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the scriptures, and then we will go back through them and look at them one by one. And I'm doing a little bit of everything here this morning, so it may not be as smooth as what you're used to. But starting in Matthew chapter 26, verse 1, it says this. "And it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples, you know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, who is called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Jesus and subtly and kill him. But they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people. Now when Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointments, and poured it on his head as she sat at meat," or eating with him. "But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, To what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. And when Jesus understood it, he said unto them, Why trouble ye this woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For you have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also be this woman hath done, be told for a memorial of her. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests, and said unto them, What will you give me, and I will deliver him unto you? And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time he sought opportunity to betray him. Now, it's kind of sad that things turned out the way that they did, and Judas was so bent on revenge and just bent on just doing his own thing that that he had no earthly concept or idea about what exactly Jesus was doing and what Jesus was all about. He was entirely given over to the flesh, and that ruled his entire thinking and his entire way of being. And he was instrumental, really, in the death of Jesus on the cross. And it's kind of an unfortunate situation with Judas in all, because we read later on that after he betrayed Jesus, after he realized exactly what he had done, that he was filled with remorse and tried to get the money back. And they told him, it's not our problem. You did what you did. So you just got to live with it. And then he went from there, and he went out and he killed himself, hung himself. And so there was no good end to it whatsoever. But with that, let's get into some of the verses here. Let's back up to verse 1, and let's look at it again. And it says, again, and when it came to pass, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, You know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. And all these things that it talked about there in verse 1 is just all these teachings that Jesus has been doing for basically 3.5 years. This teaching, he said, all these things, the teaching's over, the teaching is done. It's now time for everything to get down to the way it's just going to be. There is no more things to teach. There is no more to learn. At this time, there's always going to be things to learn as we continue our Christian walk and our Christian journey with Christ. There are always things that we're going to learn. If we ever get to the point that we think that we have learned everything, there's nothing else left to learn, then that's when we need to get on our knees and start praying to the Lord to open our hearts and our eyes and our ears to hear him speak and to understand exactly what he's trying to say to us and what he's trying to get across to us, because like I said, there's always something to learn. But at this point, Jesus' earthly ministry is about over. Said this is Tuesday. This is the last day of the Lord's public teaching, and so this is the Passion Week. This is the last time that they're going to interact really with Jesus in this teaching moment. And he says, it's all done. Everything I'm going to share with you has been shared. It's now up to us to interpret it and to understand it. But he says, after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. And he's basically telling them, it's time. The time is now. The time has come. Everything I've prepared you for, everything I've told you about, everything that I have warned you about, it's time, and it's getting ready to come to pass. And the time to be betrayed is now, and I'm going to be crucified. I'm going to die. Just think about how his disciples would have felt about that moment. What would have been going through their mind? There would have been fear. There would have been anxiety. There would have been probably rage and hatred, because, they loved Jesus and they didn't want anybody to hurt Jesus. So there would have been all those emotions that were popping up and bubbling over that they didn't know how to deal with. And Jesus is just telling them to prepare them, and it's time. And we see this start to play out in the next few verses. In verse 3, it says, Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, who is called Caiaphas. And why did they do that? Why did they get together? They all came together, and they were basically tired of Jesus. They were tired of his teachings. They were tired of all this stuff he was doing. They were tired of everything that Jesus represented, everything that Jesus was all about. And so we're done with it. We're done with it, Jesus. We're done with it. We're done with you. We're going to deal with you. And they gathered in Caiaphas, the high priest's house, to have this meeting of the minds. And this mob mentality began to take over. And that's really the thing that happens. This mob mentality that takes over is something that leads to a lot of ill will and a lot of horrible things that happen to a lot of people. It's the mob rules kind of deal. And so they're gathered together. And it says in verse 4, it says, and they consulted that they might take Jesus by suddenly and kill him. In other words, it's not going to be something out in the open. They're just going to kind of sneak in the shadows and behind closed doors. They're going to make things up. They're going to just do whatever they need to do to kind of get by, and they're going to take Jesus. They're going to kill him. And that's their plan. They are plotting murder. These are the religious elites and religious leaders in Israel, and they are plotting murder against a man, against Jesus. And it'd be no different than if we all gathered together as a church and said, you know what, I don't like brother so-and-so, we need to take him out and kill him. Same deal, same difference. And Jesus isn't just like any other man or any other person. He's the Son of God, and it all was part of the prophecy. But the concept, they were plotting actual murder. It wasn't something that they were trying to defend themselves or something that they were trying to do to protect anybody. They were plotting murder. And then in verse 5 it says, but they said, not on the feast day, lest it be an uproar among the people. And he's talking about this feast day. And what they're talking about here is the feast of the Passover, these religious holidays, all the rules and things that these Jewish leaders had set many years ago. They're saying, we're going to do this, but we can't do it during the Passover. We can't do it during the feast days because the people would be upset about it. They would say, no, you can't do that now. You're violating all of our policies, all of our procedures. You're violating everything. And also, we got to remember that even though they didn't like Jesus, Jesus was very popular among the people. And that was really one of the reasons they didn't like Jesus, is because he was so popular among the people. They were, in essence, jealous of Jesus. They were jealous of him and everything he represented. Jesus removed power from them. And so they said, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it in a way that it's not going to upset him. We're going to make it look like it's a good thing. And we know that they actually turn him over to the Romans and get the Romans to do their dirty work. But in verse 6, it says, now when Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, so Jesus he made another mistake. He violated another one of their rules. He went to the house of a leper. He ate in the house of an actual leper, someone who was unclean, someone who he was not supposed to be around. As a Jew, you're not supposed to be around lepers or unclean people. But Jesus, when they supper at his house, what was he thinking? He was just asking for trouble, right? Well, it just tells us about Jesus' nature. Jesus doesn't care who we are, what we're about. He doesn't care what our sin is, what our life is, how big of a mess it is. Jesus meets us where we are, and Jesus delivers us from all the things that hinder us, that pull us apart and pull us away from him. I believe the Bible tells us we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. That we're to fix our eyes on Jesus, and Jesus came to heal the sick, to fix what's broken. That's Jesus. That's what Jesus does. And Jesus doesn't care if this guy's a leper. Jesus doesn't care what the Jewish traditions say and how the Jewish basically are discriminating against this person or anybody else. And, that's one of the dangers we got to be very careful of with organized religion. Organized religion in some instances has been used as a tool of discrimination and hate. That should never be the case. If our church, our religion is a place where people learn to hate other people, then we're not doing something right. We're doing everything wrong, because the love of Jesus should compel us to love everyone as we love ourselves, to look at everyone as we would ourselves, and to show the compassion of God in Christ onto everyone else. That's what it means to be a Christian. And all this other garbage that we see going on about this group or that group, or this person's sin or that person's sin, and how we should be this way, how we should be that way. If it violates Jesus' law of love, then it's a violation of God's law, and we shouldn't be involved in it whatsoever. But I know that was a little bit off topic, but the reality is Jesus here, he's in this house of this leper, and it just basically is giving the Jews more fuel for their fire, but Jesus is not doing anything wrong. In their eyes he is, but in his eyes he is not. So he's there, he's eating supper with them. And it says, then there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. So Jesus sitting there eating, and this woman brings this alabaster box full of precious ointment. And this precious ointment, it's a perfume is really what it is. And it's very expensive, very precious and priceless. It's probably something that she saved and saved and saved and saved to be able to buy. And she takes it, and she knows that this is a special time, that this is something that's very special, that Jesus is special, and she knows that the end is about to come. So she takes this oil and she pours it over his head. And the thing about it, it's people are like, whoa, what has she done? What has she done? In reality, all she's doing is it's an act of worship. She is worshiping the Lord. She is anointing the Lord. She's giving him the best that she has to offer. And that's another lesson in itself, that we just give the Lord the best of what we have to offer. It could be an expensive thing of perfume. It could be something that other people think is just cheap and generic and worthless. But if it's the best that we have and we're offering it to God as a sacrifice, it says we are the living sacrifice. We offer ourselves completely to God, and the things that we give to God are our gifts to God. So we have to give ourselves fully over to God, and that's good enough. As long as we give the best of what we have to God, that's fine. It doesn't matter what the gift is. It's the intent, and it is the motive behind the gift that what really matters. We get so confused in our world today because we have so many people that place value in so many worldly things that they think the more expensive the worldly gift is, the better it is. In reality, what's the motive behind it? Just think about your kids. Your kids, when they give you gifts, when they're little and they make things like cards and things like that, those things are precious to you, not because they cost a lot of money. It's a piece, most times it's just a piece of paper with some crayon on it, but it comes from the heart. It comes from the soul. And when we give to God, it's the same concept. It's to be given from the heart and from the soul. And that's what God's after. But the disciples at this point, they're really not seeing it in the right light, and actually they're this pot's being stirred a little bit by Judas. It says here, but when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, "To what purpose is this waste?" And it was Judas. Judas was the one that was kind of leading the charge here, getting everybody riled up. And he made them, they got them thinking, well, what is this? What is this waste? Why did you waste this expensive perfume by just pouring it over Jesus' head? Why did you do that? What in the world's going on? And the excuse is, for this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. Boy, ain't that a common excuse. Well, you could, instead of buying that, you could have sold it and gave it to the poor. You could have given it to the poor. And Judas is really thinking, you could have given it to me and I could have carried that money and I could have stole it, is what he's really getting at. But he's using it as just something, you did bad by doing something for the Lord. You could have done better by just giving it to us or giving it to the poor. And there's a little illustration here in the lesson. I do like it. It says, I will read it. It says, in a certain church on Easter Sunday, a woman of wealth presented a bouquet of choice flowers that cost $50, and she gave it to each one of the members of the church. It says, and not a few people were in a state of perturbation, or they were upset about it, because the money had not been given to the poor. The pastor announced at the evening service that all the people who desired to celebrate Easter by helping the poor with money might hand him the gifts at the close of the service, and not a single person remained to give him $1. So in other words, the people were so upset because this woman was given these gifts, and she could have took that money and given it to the church, put it in the treasury, given it to the poor, but instead she gave them gifts. How dare her give them a gift out of love, out of compassion? And the pastor says, well, you know what? If you think it would be better used, given to the poor, bring me your gift and give it to me, and then we'll take it and we'll give it to the poor. And not a single one of them brought their gift. See, it's a lot of times that's an excuse. We become jealous when other people give because we, I don't know. I think we become jealous because we feel like that they're showing us up, making us look cheap or something like that. And when in reality, they're just trying to give to be nice, to share some love with us. And we make up these excuses, but when we get the gift and it comes time, okay, we'll give the gift back and we'll give the money to the poor. It's like, oh, no, we can't do that. Heaven forbid we do that. And that's the same thing going on here. It's with Judas and these disciples. And it's sad that they revert to this kind of mentality, but Jesus addresses them. It says, when Jesus understood, or basically when he heard what they were saying, he said to them, why trouble you this woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. She has given me a gift. She has given me this precious gift. Why are you troubling her? Why are you getting on to her? She's just expressing her love for me and her worship of me. That's all she's doing. So why are you acting this way? Why are you doing these things? And that probably got their attention a little bit there. It says, for you have the poor always with you, but me you have not always. Now, what did Jesus mean there? It says, you're always going to have poor people to help. There's always going to be poor people to minister to help. He says, but I'm leaving. I'm not going to be here. And, and we think, well, that's kind of selfish in a way. Why shouldn't we help the poor? Why should we just dish all this out on Jesus, not help the poor? And that's kind of the mentality, but that's not what he's saying here. He's saying there's always going to be an opportunity to help others. He says, but this is a special time of worship to where this opportunity will never happen again. And anyway, remember, everything belongs to God anyway, and God will give to who he gives, and God will take from who he takes. And, it's all really up to God anyway. So there's always going to be plenty for us to give and plenty of opportunity for us to give. So he says, you're always going to have the poor. You're going to be able to help them. So I'm not always going to be here. And he says, for in that she have poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. She did this to worship. She did this to prepare me for what was going to come. She understood it. She gets it. Even though y'all don't get it, she gets it. She gets the fact that I'm about to die, and she is preparing that. She's preparing herself. And honestly, we would be much better off if we were prepared for Jesus' burial, death, and resurrection. If we prepared ourselves for the salvation that comes from the Lord. And these disciples, they need to be prepared for what was getting ready to come too. But they had turned the blinders on and turned a blind eye to it all. And then verse 13, he says, verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this and this woman have done be told for memorial of her. We still talk about it today, the alabaster box. Woman, the alabaster box. It's a memorial to Christ. It's a memorial to the gospel. It's a memorial to his passion, his death, his burial, his resurrection. It's a memorial to all these things. It's really a memorial to how we are to approach our worship to God, worship him completely and totally, and we're to fully worship and to give ourselves fully to him. That's really what it's all about. And then in verse 14, then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went into the chief priests. Now Judas, he's done. He's tired. He is tired of Jesus not doing things quote unquote the right way. He's tired of Jesus not doing things the way that he feels like they should be done. He's like the holiness committee that we sometimes talk about in church. They have all the rules and regulations, and if you're not following the rules and regulations that they have set, then you ain't no count. They're done with you. They ain't gonna fool with you no more. And you're out of here. Judas had that attitude. Judas was very religious, but Judas had no relationship with Jesus whatsoever. And so he was done. He was tired. He's going to deal with it. He's going to deal with it for the benefit of the whole church, of the whole community. So in verse 15, it said unto them, after he goes to the chief priests and said unto them, what will you give me? And I will deliver him unto you. And they coveted him for 30 pieces of silver. Greed. It's like, you know what? You want him? I'll bring him to you. But what's in it for me? What are you going to do for me? What are you going to give me? And it's like, fine. 30 pieces of silver. Here's some silver. Chump change. Delivering to us. He's yours. Then the last verse. And from that time, he sought opportunity to betray him. From that time on, he sought every opportunity he could to betray Jesus. And we know that he eventually carries it out, that his betrayal is complete. Jesus is arrested, crucified. And we also know he rose again from the dead. So what's our lesson this morning? What is it we need to get from this morning? Well, number one, we need to be true to God. Number two, we need to always check ourselves. We need to understand what our condition is, what our heart's condition is. We need to understand where we stand with God. Number three, we need to make sure that our motives are pure and holy, and we're motivated by the gospel of Jesus Christ and not by our own selfish deeds. And number five, we should worship God with all that we have. We should give our entirety to God. And so, with that said, that's our Sunday school lesson for this morning. Again, like I said, for the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing online Sunday school, so no in-person Sunday school. But don't forget, we are having in-person services at 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock on Sundays. And you can also always tune in and watch on our Facebook Live feed. And then always don't forget, we do online giving through our church website, StanfordChurchOfTheNazarene.com. And as always, if anyone needs anything at all, don't forget to reach out to me. I'll be as available as I possibly can. And also this morning, remember those in our church that are sick and those that have lost loved ones and those that are just struggling this morning. When we pray, let's lift them up in prayer. So until next time, actually till 11 o'clock, we'll see you then. Have a great day.